Discover the incredible truth about the Greek afterlife. 7 Transformative Secrets Revealed. Sarah's heart raced as she stood beside her desk. The morning sun illuminating her classroom filled with dust-covered relics of history, faded maps, and posters that didn't spark any curiosity, but merely hung like ghosts of forgotten times. Each day felt like a battle against the tide of teen apathy. This wasn't just a job. It was a desperate mission to breathe life into the stories of the past, stories so rich, so vibrant. Yet her students simply slouched in their seats, scrolling through their phones, lost in worlds that seemed far more exciting than her lessons on ancient civilizations. Her father, George, lived in a world of storytelling. He was a Greek immigrant, a man rooted in tradition who spoke of gods and heroes with a fervor that could ignite a heart. Yet even his tales, which had once enchanted her, felt like echoes in the walls of her classroom. Was there truly a connection between her father's ancient legends and the lives of her students? Every night, after another day of lackluster engagement, Sarah would sink into her couch, exhausted from scouring the internet for teaching ideas that might spark interest, only to be met with a profound exhaustion, one that stemmed not just from work, but the weight of expectations pressing on her chest. Today, she felt that familiar burden, a fraying rope getting harder to grasp. But then, unexpectedly, a letter arrived for George, its weathered paper whispering of untold family secrets tied to a legacy steeped in Greek philosophy concerning life beyond death. Her mind buzzed with curiosity and a spark of hope as she watched George, frail and bent, fumble with the envelope. Would this revelation bridge the gap between their worlds? Would it open a door into the richness of his heritage that she could share with her students? "Open it, Dad," she urged, her voice laced with a mix of anxiety and excitement. But George hesitated, his eyes clouding with a tempest of emotions, gratitude for the past and resentment for what had been lost. Would he share the stories that had shaped him, or would he retreat into his own quiet suffering? The revelation loomed like a shadow over their conversation. As Sarah began piecing together George's stories of myth and culture, she felt a swell of determination to weave these ancient lessons into her evolving curriculum. Perhaps this could be the key to igniting a fire within her students. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet the tension started to spike. There were murmurs among her colleagues, skeptical glances that felt like barbs against her resolve. The principal's frown weighed heavily, and doubt crept in with each passing day. But then, against all odds, Sarah's classroom began to hum with restless energy. Students who once seemed disinterested now leaned forward, captivated by tales of Hades and Persephone, their eyes alight with the reflections of an afterlife rich with redemption and meaning. At that moment, Sarah felt a new sense of hope swell within her, but then doubt clawed at her insides. Would they truly understand these lessons? Or would they find more value in the instant gratification of their screens? As the daily battles within the classroom intensified, Sarah also confronted a brewing storm at home. The revelations from the letter began to fracture her understanding. George's past, interwoven with family grudges and shadows of betrayal that seeped into their present, weighed heavily on her shoulders. The more she learned, the more she realized the implications. Would honoring her father's traditions mean betraying her own voice? Would her students find comfort in the teachings of an ancient world? Or would George's legacy only serve to widen the rift in their family? As she prepared to stand before the board, the stakes felt impossibly high. This wasn't only about her career. It was about healing familial wounds, holding on to culture while forging a new path. Her resolve collided with paralyzing fear as she faced the moment summoning her courage. How could she distill the essence of her father's story to prove its importance, both to her students and to herself? Would she falter or stand strong, ready to face whatever judgment awaited? The tension thickened, leaving her longing for clarity in the cacophony of conflicting emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. Even as she considered her future, the journey ahead loomed uncertain. The weight of tradition tugged at her heart, anchoring her to the past, while the whisper of possibility beckoned her to forge a new legacy of her own. As Sarah stood before her class, her mind raced. Every desk sat like a stagnant sea of disinterest, but the powerful stories from her father's past surged within her, threatening to spill out. She took a deep breath, clutching the chalk in her hand, and began. Today, we're diving into the concept of the afterlife as perceived by the ancient Greeks, she announced, trying to control the tremor in her voice. But this isn't just a story about gods and underworlds. It's an exploration of what we value in life and how we understand our legacies. The moment her words echoed in the room, there was an unexpected silence. For the first time, a couple of students turned their attention away from their screens, curiosity flickering in their eyes. As she detailed the journey of souls and their trials in the afterlife, Sarah began to weave in personal reflections parallel lessons from her own life experiences, the weight of cultural expectations, and the power of family history. She paused frequently to gauge their reactions, and every nod in engagement felt like a small victory. But even amidst this shift, a familiar wave of doubt crashed over her. What if she was misreading their interest? What if, in the fervor of her storytelling, she was merely projecting her own desires onto them? These questions gnawed at her as she forged ahead, lost in an inspiring rhythm. Imagine standing before Sharon, the ferryman of the dead, with your choices laid bare before you. Every decision made, every connection formed, haunting you like shadows. What would you want him to say about your journey? At this moment, the room filled with an electrifying tension. A girl in the back raised her hand, an earnest question spilling forth. "Miss, what if you don't know what your journey is?" The vulnerability in that question struck Sarah. How much of her life had been spent chasing expectations, her father's traditions, and her own blurred aspirations? Did she know what her journey truly was? "Sometimes, you have to embrace the uncertainty," she replied, her heart pounding. "It's in the moments of doubt that we create our most profound discoveries." In that exchange, Sarah felt a flicker of solidarity with her students, an acknowledgement of their shared uncertainty in facing the future. They were not just passive recipients of knowledge. They were co-creators of understanding. Yet, the terrifying thought remained: could this connection transcend the classroom? After the bell rang, freeing the students, Sarah languished at her desk, wrestling with the budding realization that her father's stories were not just ancient relics but living wisdom capable of reshaping not just her teaching but her own identity. She needed to delve deeper, unravel the threads of George's legacy, but prepare for whatever emotional upheaval might come with it. This Herculean task felt daunting, yet it beckoned her to confront the chaos lodged in her heart. As she gazed out the window, uncertainty brewed within. What if the revelations held within those pages of heritage could not only ignite her classroom but also reclaim her fractured familial bonds? The path unfolded ahead, daunting yet promising, as the whispers of possibility spiraled in her mind. A sudden thought pierced through her internal tumult. The swirling questions of her family's past threatened to envelop her. Could the roots of her father's stories unlock a strength she never knew she possessed? The time had come to delve deeper into her family's history, but would she be ready to face the hidden truths that threatened to surface? With a new determination, she opened her laptop, preparing to research the origins of George's letter, but dread shadowed her resolve. What secrets might await her? The journey had only just begun. As Sarah stared at her laptop screen, the search bar flickering like a pulse, she felt a blend of anticipation and trepidation. Each query she typed felt like a risky venture into uncharted territory, a journey into the recesses of her family's past. The weight of her father's legacy felt more daunting than ever. Why had she waited so long to explore these stories? Delving into archives and historical databases, she began to uncover snippets of her family history that seemed both alien and familiar. She clicked through old letters and faded photographs, each image stirring emotions she had long buried. A smile from her father in dusty postcards transported her to a time when she felt more connected to him before adulthood and expectation had muddied their bond. But it wasn't all nostalgia. The reality of what she was discovering chipped away at her certainty. Peculiar patterns emerged. Tales of struggles, of immigrants battling disapproval and prejudice, echoed against the backdrop of her own experiences. How could the weight of their legacy sit so heavily upon her while she grappled with her quest for purpose? A thought struck her: were her father's stories merely quaint recountings or profound lessons demanding personal introspection? This exploration became a mirror reflecting her internal conflict. If she were to carry on the mantle of her heritage, what compromises would she have to make to her identity? Could she remain true to herself while honoring the call of her ancestry? The clock ticked ever onward, a relentless reminder of the responsibilities that awaited her. Planning lessons, preparing for lectures. Her professional life awaited her attention, yet the pull of self-discovery proved fierce. She toggled between documents, a class syllabus on Greek mythology, and the stories of her father's life felt intertwined, each one feeding the other. Through the haze of confusion, a flicker of clarity ignited within her. What if her true purpose was not to simply teach but to connect the ancient with the personal? The thought was exhilarating, an emerging theory that perhaps these narratives of the past did not simply exist as artifacts of history. Instead, they were vital blueprints that could guide her and her students as they navigated their paths through a complicated world. But wasn't that the trickiest part? Could she convey the value of that connection without imposing her interpretations on her students, making them feel like mere descendants of her lineage? Would they similarly struggle to carve their identities from her narrative viewpoints while interweaving their own stories? Sarah pushed back her chair, frustration casting shadows across her thoughts. She had to find a way to approach this integrated teaching method, leaving space for her students to explore their journeys intersecting with the tales of their ancestors. Perhaps the key was engagement, not just sharing her thoughts, but facilitating discussions that allowed them to shape their understanding while embracing uncertainty. With increased resolve, she scribbled notes on ideas for integrating personal storytelling into her lessons, feeling the thrill of crafting a new path ahead. It was no longer just about meeting curricular goals. It was about fostering a dialogue with life itself, a true exchange that could spring from the roots of history. As her ideas began to take form, she realized the next step was approaching her father with open-hearted curiosity. What else had she yet to understand about him? What truths buried in his past could illuminate their present? Determined now, she set her fingers to typing once more. A message to him would be the catalyst for this familial exploration. Yet, as she began to compose, a knot of fear tightened in her stomach. Would he welcome her inquiries? Or would confronting those deep-seated issues illuminate unresolved pain between them? The question lingered in the air like a specter, a confrontation about to unfold. Would she be ready to face her own reflections in the stories they shared? As Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her heart raced with anticipation. Should she begin with the questions that had been swirling in her mind? Or would it be better to ease into the conversation? She paused, thinking of her father's stern demeanor, the way his eyes had darkened when faced with uncertainty. How would he react when she began peeling back the layers of a situation they had both avoided for too long? The stark brightness of her laptop screen illuminated the room, but it also reflected the shadows lurking within her thoughts. Attempting to convey to him her desire for connection felt monumental, as if reaching across a vast chasm that had formed over years of unspoken words and unshared experiences. With a deep breath, she started typing. Dad, I've been researching our family history, and it's made me think about our own stories. The words felt shaky yet empowering. Was this the bridge to mend their fractured connection, or merely the first stone in a hurtful path? Even as she wrote, doubts crept in. Would he dismiss her, view her curiosity as an invasion? Would it awaken feelings he had long buried, a world she wasn't sure she was ready to encounter? After several drafts, she finally hit send, a weight lifting off her shoulders but a new one settling in her chest. In that moment, she recognized a significant development within herself. She was no longer the passive receiver of her father's history. She was taking the initiative, willing to explore pain and pride alike, a transformation that marked a substantial shift in her journey of self-discovery. As she awaited his response, She turned back to her lesson plans with a newfound vigor. She envisioned her students eagerly sharing their stories of heritage alongside the fables of Greek mythology. This blending of cultures could unlock insights, allowing them to learn from past encounters, just as she was now learning from her father's experiences. Imagining an interactive classroom filled with chatter and laughter reignited her passion for teaching, but it also sparked a nagging question. How much of herself could she draw on without overshadowing her students' voices? A ping on her phone broke her reverie. His response was quick and to the point. "What do you want to know?" A simple question, yet laden with implications. The invitation was there, but so was the wariness. What specific truths did she want to uncover, and would she like the answers? As she sat poised to respond, she felt the full weight of her intentions colliding with the reality of their relationship. Could she dig deeper without unearthing emotions better left buried? And what if, in the process, she discovered more about herself than she had anticipated? She decided to outline her questions clearly, knowing that tenderness was essential. The honor would lie in framing her inquiries with empathy, ensuring he wouldn't feel cornered. As she formulated her thoughts, she also reflected on her own voice as an educator. What were her foundational values in this exchange? Respect, honesty, care not just for him but for herself. As the day wore on, Sarah embraced her roles as a daughter and an educator, both perspectives merging into a singular focus. She wanted to create an environment where legacy was celebrated, but this involved unraveling complicated emotions and historical truths within herself and the classroom. In that intricate web of questioning lay her answers. Just as she completed her draft, she glanced at the clock, startled to see how much time had passed. The anticipation of the unfolding conversation, mixed with her growing excitement for her class, left her breathless. She realized that any new discoveries about her father would shape not just her identity but the narratives she shared with her students. But as she prepared to hit send again, hesitation crept back in. If they ventured too deep, could they emerge unscathed? Did she truly want to seek out the echoes of their past, or was there a melody of pain better left unsung? As she teetered on the edge of that decision, the question loomed heavy. Was she ready to confront those truths, or had she unwrapped secrets best kept hidden? The moment to respond was here, a crossroads rife with potential. What truths would emerge from the spaces where their stories intersected? As Sarah's fingers danced across the keyboard, she constructed a carefully worded response, each stroke a testament to her inner strength rumbling forth. I want to know about our family's past, the stories of your youth, the challenges you faced, and how those shaped who you are today. There was a determination behind her words. She wasn't merely asking for information. She was opening the door for vulnerability, for a chance to connect meaningfully. Hitting send, she leaned back, her mind swirling with potential revelations. Each scenario that played out in her head tugged at her heart. What would he share? Would it be tales of triumph or sorrow? The shadows of doubt danced at the edges of her resolve, but she pushed them away. This was not solely about him. It was equally about her, about understanding the roots from which she had grown. The intersection of their lives was a territory she had longed to explore. The following hours dragged, thick with anticipation. Her students' chatter provided a welcome distraction as she prepared for class. They would embark on their journey into Greek mythology, and she found solace in guiding them through epic tales of gods and heroes. Perhaps, in storytelling, they would uncover their own truths. Everyone had a narrative deserving of recognition. Her passion surged, igniting an idea. What if they could create an anthology that intertwined their family stories with myths? The notion electrified her, pushing her resolve to draw from her experiences more boldly. Finally, the notification she had been waiting for arrived. A single ping that held the weight of their shared past. You really want to know? The tone was neutral but layered with complexities she could sense even through the screen. Anxiety bloomed in her chest, rooted in the very uncertainty she sought to confront. Taking a moment, she collected her thoughts, a swirl of professional aspirations and personal revelations merging into one cohesive clarity. With her own story in parallel, she wrote back, "Yes, I do. I think understanding your experience can help me grow, too." As she sent her message, she felt an escalation of emotions, anxiety, and anticipation both tethered to vulnerability. A small victory had emerged in that moment. She was prioritizing her voice alongside the voices of her students, conscious that what she wanted to untangle wasn't just her father's narrative, but her own emerging identity as well. With each passing moment, Sarah was aware that this exchange marked a significant shift in their relationship. She felt the emerging pattern of connection begin to form a fragile thread between them, woven from the courage to engage authentically. Yet, doubt simmered beneath the surface. Did opening the floodgates of communication pose risks to their bond, or would it ultimately fortify their understanding of one another? Moments later, a new message pinged. Your grandmother and I weren't close. She left when I was young. My dad was hard on me. His words resonated, triggering a sense of empathy that forced her to confront not just his experiences, but her own inherited trials. She realized that familial stories are not merely tales, they shape perceptions, infusing lives with either burdens or empowerment. In that realization, Sarah felt an unfamiliar determination grow within her. She had set her trajectory, but the course ahead appeared increasingly treacherous. Navigating her father's emotional landscape would require both courage and skill. Each revelation could introduce new layers of complexity to their relationship. Would her willingness to explore and reveal lay the groundwork for reconciliation, or would it unearth tensions better left in the past? As she prepared for her class, plotting the contours of the anthology idea, a thought echoed through her mind. What if her willingness to confront uncomfortable truths not only changed her narrative, but also inspired her students to confront their own histories? The profound uncertainty bore down heavily, demanding resolution. But an even more pressing question bubbled to the surface. What if every story unearthed revealed more about her identity, her worth, her deepest fears? Would she find empowerment through this exchange? Or would the unearthing of past pains lead to fragmentation? The moment was ripe for exploration, a tipping point on the horizon. With a grasp on her growing ambition, she steeled herself for the path ahead, knowing that the next step would be crucial. Would she be ready to navigate the labyrinth of his truths, even if they meant delving into the darkness of her own? The time had come to face the complexities of their intertwined histories. The morning sun streamed through the classroom windows, casting a warm glow over Sarah's desk. Yet she felt the chill of hesitation lingering just beneath the surface. Her students engaged in lively discussions about the heroes of Greek mythology. But her mind drifted, caught in the web of her father's recent revelations. She scanned the room, watching their animated faces as they debated the moral decisions of Odysseus and the tragic fate of Achilles. Yet she felt detached, as if she were merely an observer in a play where she should be the leading actress. With a determined breath, she picked up the lesson plan and began to lay the groundwork for the anthology project that had electrified her just days earlier. A new focus materialized in her mind. These students needed to connect their personal narratives to those timeless myths. If she could guide them to confront their own pasts through the lens of epic stories, perhaps she could also leverage this exploration to dissect her own familial saga. She jotted down ideas on the board, pushing aside distractions. Think about your lineage as a mythic journey. Each of you has a hero's story involved with triumph, failures, and lessons learned, she urged, her voice steady even as her heart raced. As she facilitated dialogue, a flicker of ambition ignited within her. This wasn't just an exercise in literature, it was an opportunity for new beginnings, both for her students and herself. The prospect of sharing vulnerable stories was daunting yet thrilling. In discussing their own challenges, would she see echoes of her father's struggles? Would they share the same yearning for understanding? The connection bolstered her spirit, offering a glimpse of what reconciliation could feel like, or perhaps clarity amid chaos. She took a seat, absorbing the youthful energy in the room as they scribbled down thoughts, stories of loss, perseverance, and growth. It was cathartic, brutal, and raw. The vulnerability of their sharing illuminated the space, and it dawned on her that her students were digging into their histories, much like she had begun to do with her father. This mirrored vulnerability had the potential to strengthen their bond and awaken a courage she feared she did not possess. After class, while packing her materials, Sarah reflected on the connection forged in those moments. She had presented a challenge that invited her students to peel back layers of their inherited narratives and confront their intricacies. Each story unfolded like a page from a myth, a lesson wrapped in personal histories. Yet, beneath the excitement of their explorations lay the anxiety of the unknown. Her own relationship with her father was still shrouded in uncertainty. What did he truly mean by his terse confessions? How would his past shape the future they could carve together? As she put her books away, Sarah's muse beckoned. She needed to respond to her father's message again. The mere thought of reopening that line of communication ignited a whirlwind of emotions. Could her willingness to delve into his past give her the strength to confront her own uncertainties? With cautious determination, she settled into her chair and opened a fresh message window, heart thumping. I want to understand more about your relationship with your father and how those experiences impacted you. Knowing your story could help me find my way, she typed, each word a step deeper into vulnerability. Her finger hovered over the send button, a moment of contemplation hanging in the air like charged particles before a storm. What if he responded in anger or worse, with silence? But what he didn't know about himself, his lessons, his pain might furnish the key to a potential breakthrough, not just for him but for herself too. Before she could second-guess herself, a quick tap sent the message into the digital void. There was no turning back now. She had opened Pandora's box, and she could only hope for clarity to emerge from the chaos. Outside, uncertainty loomed like thunderclouds overhead, but the promise of understanding sparked an undeniable sense of courage. Would his past hold the insights she required to navigate the labyrinth of her own identity? Or would she find herself ensnared in old conflicts, possibly rewriting her own conclusions? The answer lay somewhere in the exchange yet to come. How much deeper would they go into the depths of shared family history? And what revelations awaited Sarah just beyond the horizon of connection? The following day, Sarah arrived early at school, the darkness lingering just before dawn, preparing to give way to another day of discovery. Armed with fresh resolve, she reviewed her anthology project, now more meaningful than before. In her mind, the connection she sought with her father was mirrored in her students' explorations of their personal epics. She envisioned how their narratives would weave together connections, moments where comprehension and acceptance crossed borders. As she stood before the students, a surge of enthusiasm eclipsed her earlier trepidation. Our ancestors faced trials just like you, she began, her voice resonating with urgency. And their stories, much like yours, have the power to teach and to heal. Voices flared in a chorus of thoughts, each student eager to contribute. A hand rose, uncertainty etched on the face of one timid boy. But what if my story isn't worthy? His words resonated with a haunting undertone that struck Sarah directly. She took a contemplative breath, recognizing that this moment mirrored her own fears of judgment within her past. Every story is worthy. Your struggles, your victories, they define you, she replied, her tone imbued with empathy. This was her opportunity to cultivate an environment where vulnerability thrived, and not just for her students, but for herself as well. During the week that followed, Sarah remained dedicated to this new quest for connection. She encouraged her students to create not just narratives, but visual representations of their ancestral myths. Each child gravitated to their unique creative process, some painting, others writing poetry or assembling collages. The classroom transformed into a sanctuary of expression. Yet amid this blossoming creativity, Sarah quietly wrestled with her unresolved feelings about her father. Feeling the tug of her personal journey, she allocated moments each day to reflect on her own narrative. The drafts of her father's story she had sketched in the corners of her mind began to morph into tangible questions. What shapes his decisions? What motivates him to keep secrets? Each question served as a key, unlocking parts of her own identity, while also foreshadowing the response she awaited from him. One evening, while preparing for the next day's lessons, her phone buzzed. A message. It felt like a lightning bolt, igniting her curiosity. She hesitated, heart racing, fingers trembling over the screen. This was the response she had invoked, an unraveling of the past. Your mother, she never knew the whole truth about my childhood. But you deserve honesty, Sarah. The concise message sent chills down her spine. Each word echoed deeply, a tremor of revelation rippling through her thoughts. What truths lay hidden in the shadows of her father's past, and what impact would they have on her present? Determined, Sarah reminded herself of the strength she cultivated in guiding her students through their stories. Perhaps this confrontation with her own history was an epic voyage she needed to embark on, not just for herself, but as a testament to her students' journeys as well. With the classroom buzzing with creativity the next morning, Sarah felt emboldened. She initiated a group sharing session, urging everyone to speak about what they learned so far. As each student narrated fragments of their legacies, she felt the weight of her father's words settle as a backdrop, blending into the tapestry of her thoughts. What had he hidden? Was his story truly nothing like her own? Or did it contain common threads that could bind their fragmented relationship? She felt the peering eyes of her students, an audience waiting for her cue to embrace her own story alongside theirs. A wave of energy surged through her. The time had come to face these intertwined narratives not as separate entities, but as a collective path toward understanding. As each moment ticked closer to the end of the lesson, Sarah realized this was not merely about mythological heroes. It was about confronting her own potential as a hero of her story. With a newfound clarity, she understood the conversation with her father would enter a new phase. The time for understanding was at hand, but the revelation left her heart racing. Would she dare to probe the complexities of his past? And would those answers lead her toward enlightenment or darkness? The daily bell rang, but her mind buzzed with anticipation. Clutching the edges of her desk, she prepared herself to navigate this new opening, knowing deep within that the real transformation was only beginning. What lay ahead in the unveiling of her father's truth? And how drastically would it redefine her understanding of family? The dawn of a new day settled over Sarah as she entered her classroom once more. The air was charged. A quiet hum of creativity vibrated through the space. But more than that, beneath it lurked a tension she couldn't ignore. With her father's message ringing in her mind, she found it challenging to concentrate on her students' projects. Every canvas and scrap of paper they presented seemed to reflect her own unfolding narrative, a story layered with unanswered questions and emotional revelations. As the students shared their visual creations, Sarah's attention drifted between their expressions of empowerment and her own internal conflict. She was proud of the way they had embraced their vulnerabilities, yet she felt as if she stood on the precipice of her own revelation, the fear pulling her back, while the need for understanding pushed her forward. "Beautiful work, everyone," she praised, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Remember that what you've created connects you to your past and shapes your present. Just as you have shared your truths, I want to share a piece of my own story." The room stilled. She took a breath, steadying herself against the rising tide of anxiety. Sometimes the stories we hold inside are just waiting to be told. Sometimes they define us, and sometimes they free us. The faces before her were eager, expectant. They had become her source of courage. How could she ask them to confront their truths if she couldn't confront her own? In that moment, her decision crystallized. "I've been on a journey to uncover my family's history," she continued, her tone unwavering. "Recently, I received a message from my father that has changed everything I thought I knew about him and our story." As the words poured out, she felt the weight of her father's honesty echoing through her throat. The more she shared, the more she felt a release, each revelation threading its way through the collective narrative developing in the room. She spoke of her fear, her doubt, and how intertwined their stories could be. With each sentence, she began to weave the lessons from her students into her own struggle. "Just as you've faced the ghosts of your past, I am preparing to face mine," she said, gaze steady on each young face. "Let us promise to support one another as we explore our truths, no matter how difficult they are." Sarah watched as the enthusiasm in the room swelled, students connecting with her words, sharing their own fears about truth and judgment. They had begun to forge a bond that transcended the fabrics of their individual stories. Yet, simultaneously, nagging questions circled Sarah's mind. How would her father's hidden past inform her present view of him? That afternoon, consumed by introspection, She found herself uncharacteristically restless, allowing her mind to wander through hypothetical scenarios about her father. What if his facade of strength crumbled upon confrontation? What if the truth wounded her more than it healed? Each scenario felt like a double-edged sword, both frightening and exhilarating. Could she emerge from this interaction stronger, like her students? That night, as she sat alone in her living room, staring at the blinking cursor of her laptop, Sarah decided it was time to reach out. The message demanding honesty had set her on a path of confrontation. Her fingers hovered above the keys, and she hesitated only briefly before typing a response. "Can we talk?" she wrote. "There's so much I need to understand." Signing her name, she hit send. The moment the message disappeared into the digital ether, her heart raced. Relief intertwined with an escalating sense of dread. She was no longer a passive recipient of her father's narrative, she was an active participant in shaping it. With the night deepening and shadows curling around her thoughts, she grasped the realization that the conversation ahead could alter the fabric of their relationship entirely. Would she be ready to hear what he had to say? Would she find a common thread between their combined stories? Or would this journey lead them further apart? With those thoughts reverberating in her mind, sleep eluded her. Yet she felt a flicker of hope burning steadily beneath the uncertainty. The possibility of truth glimmered ahead in uncharted territory, a revelation yet to unfold as dawn cracked through another horizon. She knew the pivotal moment was approaching. Would her father's hidden life hold the key to her understanding, or would it simply reinforce the chasm between them? Sarah stood at the threshold of a dialogue that could redefine everything. And as she prepared for the next chapter, the true confrontation was waiting just on the other side of the door. As Sarah stood at the threshold of her father's door, the bright morning sun cast long shadows ahead of her. Those shadows felt like the weight of generations pressing upon her, layering her heart with both anxiety and strength. She raised her hand, hesitating only for a heartbeat before knocking, the sound echoing in her chest as if it were the drumroll heralding a revelation. The door opened, revealing her father. His face was familiar yet knitted with lines of anxiety that mirrored her own. For a moment, they stood in silence, both prisoners of the weighty history that hung between them. Sarah struggled to project calmness, a facade she hoped would convey her determination rather than her fear. "Can we talk?" she finally managed, the words tinged with more urgency than she intended. "Of course," he replied, stepping aside to let her in. His voice, usually a bastion of confidence, wavered just enough for Sarah to notice the crack of vulnerability she had craved for so long. As she entered the living room, the air shifted. Memories flooded back. Family dinners, laughter, and the comforting chaos of life shared. Yet those recollections dripped with nostalgia, caught in sharp contrast with the uncharted emotional territory they were about to traverse. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, gesturing for her to sit. Sarah perched on the edge of the couch, her palms resting on her thighs, a physical anchor against the swirling currents of her thoughts. Where to begin? How to navigate a conversation that held the power to both bind them closer and tear them apart? "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about your message," she started, her voice steady, "about how it reshaped everything I thought I knew about you." His eyes widened slightly, a flicker of recognition dawning across his face. They clashed only momentarily before he sunk into the sofa across from her, his retreat into the cushions mirroring her emotional pullback into fear. "I never wanted to burden you with my past, Sarah," he murmured, his gaze dropping. "But the truth, it's complicated." "Complicated how?" she pressed, feeling a desperate need for clarity. "What is it that I don't understand?" His silence hung like a cloud, thick and foreboding, and in that moment she recognized the very essence of the conversation. It wasn't just about facts or stories. It was about the fear that colored them both, the fear of exposing wounds, of facing uncomfortable truths. In the stillness, Sarah felt her resolve solidifying. This was her chance, an opportunity to not only understand him better but to unravel the threads of her own identity. "What were you really hiding?" she asked softly, her voice gentle yet firm. "What did I miss growing up?" Tension coiled tightly in the room. Her father shifted uncomfortably, and with every passing second, worry tightened around Sarah's heart. Would uncovering the truth reveal him as she had hoped, or would it belittle every memory she cherished? He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling noticeably. It's about secrets, things I thought I could protect you from. The admission hung in the air, waiting for the impact of truth to settle. What kind of secrets? Sarah's heart raced. What ramifications lay behind those words? Her father raked a hand through his hair, eyes glistening with unshed emotions. You deserve to know why our family is the way it is. Why I am the way I am. But it's painful for me to bear. Sarah could feel the knot in her stomach tighten. Painful or not, she understood that this was the moment, the threshold she had been moving toward, and now the reality of her father's complexities reduced everything she held dear to mere fragments. With steady determination, she leaned forward. Then let us talk about it. I need to know for both of our sakes. I don't want secrets to remain between us. The room pulsed with an urgency that made her pulse race, the air thick with anticipation. Would her father finally share the buried truths that had haunted their history? Would she emerge from this conversation more connected or painfully aware of their differences? Before she could dwell too long on the potential answers, her father met her gaze and squared his shoulders. As he opened his mouth to speak, Sarah felt the exciting, agonizing anticipation swell like a tide about to crash. This was a pivotal moment, one that had the power to rewrite everything she believed about her family, herself, and the delicate tapestry of love and truth that bound them. And just then, a knocking sound, urgent and resonant, echoed from the door, the literal embodiment of the unforeseen, waiting to bolt in. Who could it be? Would this newfound conversation slip away, hijacked by an outside force? As they both turned to the door, another layer of complexity unfurling between them, Sarah wondered whether their truths would finally be unearthed, or if the encroaching unknown would snatch that possibility away. As the door swung open, the interruption hung heavily in the air. A neighbor stood there, a pleasant smile on their face, oblivious to the tension gripping the room. Sorry to intrude, they said, peeking in with a warm yet unwelcome cheerfulness. I brought you some fresh cookies. Her father looked momentarily disarmed, the tightening of his features relaxing. But Sarah felt the stirrings of frustration rise within her. This was not just another mundane moment. It held the potential for transformation. She wanted to scream, "Can't you see we're in the midst of something important?" But instead, she watched him politely accept the offering, nodding appreciatively while internally fuming. When the door finally closed, the remnants of the mood lingered there, a cocktail of frustration, expectation, and a flickering hope that urgency hadn't slipped away completely. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. This was her moment. She would not let it slip through her fingers this time. "Dad," she said, firm yet gentle, "please, let us not avoid this. We need to talk." He sank back into the couch, a shadow of reluctance washing over him. His weary eyes met hers, a world of stories waiting beneath the surface. And she could feel the weight of his hesitation, the same hesitation she felt every day steering her own life. "I want you to know about your grandmother, about how her abandonment shaped my youth." His voice wavered, and as he spoke, Sarah sensed the depth of his pain become evident. It wasn't just words. It was a mirror reflecting years of anguish. As he shared tales of disappointment and struggle, she could see how those narratives layered their relationship, how his unyielding demeanor had been forged in the fire of his past. He spoke of maintaining an air of strength that often blurred any semblance of vulnerability. Her heart began to open, connecting the dots between the father she had struggled to understand and the man who had faced profound disappointments. "My dad was hard on me because he didn't want me to know the softness that exists in love. He believed it made you weak," he continued, his voice echoing the fragility of resilience. "I thought I was protecting you by being tough, by withholding my truths." Each word fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of empathy coursing through Sarah. The realization now surged within her. His past was not merely a tale of isolation, but a testament to survival. The familial history she feared was woven with the same fibers of struggle she had faced. It tethered their journeys together in ways previously unrecognized. "I wish I could have done differently," he said, his voice tremulous. "I never meant to keep you in the dark." "Then let us shed some light together," Sarah replied, feeling an unexpected surge of empowerment course through her. "This journey includes us both." With those words, the barriers they had both erected began to shift. Their dialogue transformed from narratives of loneliness into a shared exploration of vulnerability and healing. She saw the shadows lift from his face as the dynamic between them morphed, one filled with compassion, understanding, and mutual recognition of their intertwined struggles. As the conversation continued, with insights flowing like an ebbing tide, Sarah understood that she was standing at the precipice of her own growth. She had faced her fears and embraced the complexities of both their stories. Each revelation deepened her resolve to convey the same bravery to her students as they explored their histories through the Mythology project. When they finished, an unfamiliar lightness filled the room, a shared acknowledgement of the truths now out in the open. The opportunity for reconciliation had emerged, sprouting from the roots of until now unspoken burdens. "Thank you for this, Sarah," he said, his voice steadying. "You've given me the chance to show myself to you not just as your father, but as a man shaped by wounds and lessons." In her heart, Sarah felt a swell of pride. This connection, born from genuine acknowledgement and vulnerability, was the key to redefining their relationship. The transformation she had sought for herself became the cornerstone for the lesson she would impart to her students, the acceptance of uncertainty that births strength and leads to growth. As she stood to leave, she promised herself that each step forward would reflect not only her new understandings, but also the wisdom she gleaned from brave conversations, allowing others to see the layered complexities of their own narratives. In those intimate moments of truth between father and daughter, bond was reevaluated and solidified. In embracing their shared histories, they had unlocked the door to healing. As Sarah finally walked into her classroom that day, she was met with the bright, eager faces of her students, each echoing her own journey. She caught a glimpse of herself in their yearning to explore who they were and where they came from, an awakening that felt electric with possibility. "Today, we're not just diving into myths," she announced, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "We're connecting our stories to those of our ancestors. Let us explore where we come from. Let us ignite our narratives." The room buzzed with newfound energy, fertile ground for discovery. With a heart full of courage and a mind ready to weave history with personal truths, Sarah took her place as the storyteller, ready to guide her students toward the deeper significance of their shared humanity. She had not only learned from her father, but had transformed her understanding of identity, heritage, and the brave act of connection. More than a lesson plan, this was a mission: to cultivate awareness, to breach the confines of inherited secrets, and to welcome the fullness of their individual and collective stories. Now was the time to seize that transformation and let it flourish, illuminating the intricate tapestries they were all meant to create. This was not merely her journey, this was theirs. Now, as the echoes of her father's words lingered in her mind, she felt empowered. An indomitable spirit surged within her, charging her to inspire others and continue breaking the cycles. And she knew, without a shadow of doubt, that this was not just the conclusion of her own story, it was the beginning of many more. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm seriously. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, so don't wait even one more second to share.